Conversations with Creatives. I'm your host and producer, Carol White-Llewellyn, and I am so excited to be doing a show that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I have my friend Greg Bogoshian on, and we're going to be talking about custom guitars. So my guests today are Greg Bogoshian, who is a guitarist and the owner of RockBeach Guitars. Greg designs custom, one-of-a-kind guitars, as well as doing repairs on those that need a little TLC. And my other guest is Tommy Bianchi, who is a vocalist and guitarist with the Coupe de Villes. He's also the owner of Pop's Guitar Shop in Gates, and he owns several RockBeach guitars, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
So.
You never have enough.
So thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So Greg, I saw on your website that you started designing guitars by walking through a lumber yard and seeing a special piece of Paduke wood. So I take it you were also a woodworker as well as a guitar designer?
Actually, surprisingly enough, no. That was the very first thing I ever designed and built as wood was my first guitar. One of the people that I play with at my church at Covenant United Methodist told me that he does some woodworking, and told me I ought to stop out sometime to Pittsford Lumber and take a look at some really neat woods out there, which kind of caught me off guard because I'd never worked with wood before, but I figured, okay, if I'm out that way, I'll do it. And I did. Saw this absolutely stunning black and red billet of wood called African Paduke that I'd never seen anything like it before, and I had to buy it. I had to do something with it. I didn't know what, but as a design and process engineering technician at Xerox for 38 years, I figured I'd probably be able to figure it out. And the first guitar was history. I worked it with him, and found all the information I needed online to be able to know what was critical and what wasn't. Did a prototype out of cheap materials, and the first one came out absolutely spectacular.
Wow. How amazing.
So that was fun.
I saw that you said that, you thought that it might have a bright sound. So what exactly does that mean? And how can you look at a piece of wood and tell what it's going to sound like?
Well, that wood was so hard, so heavy, so dense that I just knew that it would have the type of character. First of all, if I made the entire guitar a solid body like that, it would be very, very heavy. Mm-hmm. And I had shoulder issues, which is one of the things that kind of prompted me to design to build my own guitars, because I couldn't play a standard guitar that was electric without my arm going numb within 12 minutes. So I figured, well, I'll do something that's chambered body so that it will have some natural resonance. It will be lighter, still have the character of the Paduke, and I chose Cuban mahogany to go with it because that's the premium of all mahoganies. And did everything literally by hand. I didn't even own a router or anything when I did the first one, and it was a book match top and back, chambered body, basically a 5-piece body. And the first time that it was actually played on stage was through Mike Gladstone when he was with Uncle Plum, and it just knocked everybody's socks off. Even the band members were looking at each other when he picked it up and played it and said, "What is that sound?" And that's when I kind of knew that I had something. Started here.
I'm curious, what would you say is the most important component of guitar? Is it the wood? Is it the way it's put together? Is it the hardware? Is it the love that goes into it?
It's actually all of those things. Everything is really important, how the woods interact, how they work. To me, what's really critical is the neck pocket itself. When mass-produced guitars make a neck pocket, they've got to be able to take stuff off the shelf and be able to have them go together without having to do a lot of manipulation, because time is money with the big manufacturers. That's understandable. When I fit a neck pocket, I measure 10 places on the neck heel, which is where it fits to the body, enter it in CNC, computer numerically controlled router, and make sure I cut a sacrificial wood neck pocket before I actually have to adjust numbers to make sure I get the exact fit that I want. Mm-hmm. And then I'll cut the neck pocket on the body. So when I mate those necks to the body, all the energy gets transferred into the body, and that, of course, into the pickups. And since I rarely use, sometimes I will use a pick guard where the pickups are mounted to, but this way the pickups are picking up the wood as well as the strings.
So I'm a little ignorant of some of these parts. Can you show us on the guitar what
Sure.
you're talking about when you refer to the neck pocket?
The neck pocket is this part right in here. And when I put these necks in place, I can literally press them in. I have a little extra material on the sides here on most of mine, you'll see, and that holds it really tight. When you figure this A string, for example, is stopping and starting 440 times a second. That's just that string. This one not as fast, but a lot heavier and a lot more energy. Most of the energy is side to side. You get some up and down, but most of the energy is side to side. So I want to capture that into the body of the guitar. Now, if I have a sloppy neck pocket and I bolt the neck down to the body rather than into the body, you don't capture that as much. So all of my guitars have so much more character because of the fact that I've got all these unique woods, like Tasmanian tiger myrtle on Cuban mahogany, all of these really exotic, beautiful woods, and I'm capturing all of the energy from the strings into it. And since the pickups are mounted to the wood rather than a pickguard, it's capturing all of that character of that wood.
Great. You know, we're going to go to break right now, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more and get you involved, Tommy.
Okay.
Great.
This program is made possible with funds from the Decentralization Program, a re-grant program of the New York State Council on the Arts, with the support of Governor Andrew Cuomo and the New York State Legislature. It is administered by Livingston Arts, a member-supported organization. It is made in association with RCTV. Welcome back to Conversations with Creatives, where my guests tonight are Greg Bogoshian and Tommy Bianchi, and we're talking about custom guitars. So one of the questions I have is, Tommy, when you go to somebody like Greg to ask for a custom guitar, how do you explain what you want? How do you convey to him what you're looking for? And then what is the collaborative process between the two of you?
Fortunately, it's pretty easy with Greg because he's a player himself.
Mm-hmm.
A very knowledgeable one who understands the physics of guitars, where to me, they're tools, they're general tools. And when I was playing Greg's guitars, this for example, this was my second one. The first one was the typical RockBeach, very resonant, very beautiful instrument. Then I said, make me something more of a traditional type guitar, only do it your way. And we went with more of a Telecaster design, which is basically a Leo Fender, only he turned it into his way. And then we probably had 5, 6 different meanings, interchanging, working on necks. Then we worked on different sounds, what we wanted this particular guitar to do. And after a few changes, we nailed it.
Right.
So
when you're working on something like this, what is your process?
Communication is really critical.
Uh-huh.
I want to try to get as much of what the flavor that they're trying to get, because all of these little things, the different woods, the different pickups, the different neck feel, the different neck profiles, all of those things, feel to a guitar player is really critical. In somebody like Tommy's hands, Tommy's a brilliant player. He can take anything and make it sound good. It will bring more out of him if the instrument feels like it's a part of him.
Uh-huh.
And one example of when he had an old Telecaster that he had, Fender Telecaster, that he didn't like the feel of it. He wanted it to feel more like the one that I did for him.
Uh-huh.
And so I reprofiled that neck. So a guitar that's been sitting around unloved for a while, now it's getting some playtime. And I don't think I have to be exclusive to play, my guitars. Everybody should own some of the classics.
Mm-hmm.
But there should also be room for something a little different, and that's where I kind of try to fall into the game. I don't want to become the next Les Paul or Leo Fender. I just want to create something that brings something different out of the player.
So when we were talking before, Tommy, you were saying that this guitar, it's kind of your heavy-duty guitar. Did I interpret that right?
correct. This guitar has been through the worst of conditions. How many days this year? It was 90-degree days. I brought it out because it could take it. It stayed in tune. The neck felt great, never got sticky. and I get to turn it up real loud and play it. That's the best part of it all.
Much to your wife's joy, I'm sure.
Well, you know, I don't have many sound men that are friends of mine either. But you know, you got to play them. You got to work them.
So, Greg, you know, your experience as a musician and guitarist yourself, how has that influenced your design of the guitars?
Well, first and foremost, to me, it's got to be comfortable. As I mentioned, I have some issues with, well, back as well as shoulder. If the guitar makes me want to pick it up and play it, I know I've done my job. If it's comfortable for me, chances are it's going to be comfortable for just about anybody because of my physical limitations. If it's a guitar, an instrument that has been sitting around for a long time and people don't want to pick it up and play it because it just doesn't feel right, or if it doesn't stay in tune properly, and I can bring that guitar back to life, I'm just as happy about getting that instrument back into the musician's hands as I am of having them buy one of my own. It's about love for, you know, the ability to play the instrument. It's about the joy of somebody when you see the smile on their face when this guitar was unplayable before and now they don't want to put it down. Now I know I've done my job.
And you were saying that you work on both electric guitars as well as acoustic and classical.
Right. In fact, I just designed my first acoustic guitar as well. I did it as a hybrid. A lot of times people that play electric guitars don't feel comfortable playing acoustic guitars, but yet they want to do some of the acoustic stuff that other bands do to cover them and all. Well, I designed and built my acoustic guitar to play beautifully acoustically, but be comfortable for electric players as well.
Huh. So is that more in the cut of the body or the neck or the...
It's a little of everything.
Really?
Again, it's not just the fact that if they're playing on stage, I built the instrument as a gigging instrument, which to me means the top is going to be a little over braids. It's not going to be as loud acoustically. However, I can stand in front of my amplifier and play it amplified very loud without having it feed back. That's important. Tommy was commenting, he just put it in his hand the first time today, and it feels like it's electric, but plays the acoustic. And that's what I was trying to capture, so that an electric player can come over to the dark side and, you know, play a little bit of the acoustic stuff.
I think
and
it's coming
feel
over to the light side.
There you go. It depends on what side of the fence you're on to start with.
Okay, well, we're going to go to break right now. When we come back, we're going to do a little bit more. Then we're going to have either one of these segments, we're going to fit in a little demonstration. Tommy's going to do some work on the guitar.
I'll keep it low.
Okay.
That's my better judgment, but I will.
Okay, great. We'll be right back.
Thanks. Okay, Tommy's got in his hands here a beautiful ash RB Tele. That's what I call my version of the venerable Fender Telecaster design, but you can see mine has this unique feature in the cutout on the bottom, which allows me to put 2 strap pegs on there, which allows you to stand it on its bottom, and it'll lean up against something without falling over. It also has forearm relief and belly cuts that are more traditional for comfort in playing. The body is flamed ash. The flame is not something that's painted on. That's something that's a natural compression feature of the wood. It is a very heavy guitar, but because of the way it's balanced, it doesn't feel like it's really heavy. And the fingerboard is Kingwood, and this is one of Tommy's favorites. And he is absolutely brilliant. If you get a chance to see the Coupe de Villes out, see him with this guitar. He brings magic to it.
Welcome back to Conversations with Creatives, where my guests today are Greg Bogoshian of RockBeach Guitars and Tommy Bianchi of the Coupe de Villes. So we're just talking about custom guitars, and I know when you and I were talking earlier, you were talking about how important the setup of a guitar is. So can you explain that a little bit more?
Oh, absolutely. Even a lot of the pros don't realize how many setups there are on an instrument like that. If you have an instrument that sometimes, especially if you're learning how to play, it seems like it's always out of tune, you're always fighting it, your fingers hurt, and you're blaming it on yourself. It's kind of like trying to learn how to skate on skates with no edges or ski with skis with no edges. You're going to fall down a lot, it's just not going to be fun, and you're going to blame yourself. And for very little cost, really, depending on how much work the instrument needs to be set up, and I've never seen one come from the factory set up right, because they have to ship them, and they basically have to get them out to keep their costs down, and it's up to the store to be able to do the setup, and supposedly, but there are very few people that take the time to do it right. When you get an instrument done by me for as little as $40 up to $75, that instrument will fit in your hand and be comfortable to play. You're not going to be fighting the instrument. You will immediately be a better player because you're not fighting the guitar. And there's a lot of subtle things that can make a huge difference, and it's worth doing. Those are some of the things that I can do to try to make your guitar feel good again in your hands and make you want to play it.
What types of things?
What types of things? Well, no frets. The frets are these little pieces right here. If those aren't level to begin with, then you might get some buzzing. It may prevent you from getting the action, the height of the strings next to the frets, down low enough to be able to play comfortably. There's an intonation setup. There's where you have to set the length of each individual string so that it stays in tune all the way up the neck. There's the relief, which is the amount of bow in the neck. When the strings pull with hundreds of pounds of force on that neck, it tends to bow the neck. And it lets you compensate for that and compensate properly. You want to have about 5/1000ths when you're pressing the strings, as I can show you down here, and up here. You'll see that there's a little bit of space between the strings. Should be a little bit of space. If there isn't, then you've got too much pull. There's called a truss rod. That rod that you adjust how much tension, back tension there is on that neck. And once you have the frets leveled to begin with, get the height set up, basically get your neck set flat, and then you can do your intonation adjustment, and you can set your relief, you can do all that kind of stuff.